Joining us now from D.C., one of our favorites, Congressman Jim Jordan, who has just been going to town with the Judiciary Committee. And I mean, some of the stuff that he's uncovered is pretty freaky. We were just talking about some of this last segment. Congressman, as always, good to have you. I want to get into the CR stuff and all of that. Sure. I spoke with Congressman Massey yesterday, and he was telling us more about what you guys have uncovered with this federal regulator going after using our purchases using these merchant codes. And I told people when this first came up with FFLs and firearm purchases that this net was going to be widened and it was going to expand to include everybody. What can be done to stop this?
Well, first you draw attention to it. And that's what we're in the middle of doing, investigating this. And I just want to go back. We first learned about this because we had an FBI whistleblower come forward, and he had gotten information that the government had requested from a big bank, Bank of America, which talked about all debit credit card purchases of people in a certain location for a certain amount of time. So in the D.C. area around January 6, 2021. And then they also the government asked the bank, and overlay that with any gun purchase at any time. And it looks like they solicited this information without a warrant, without any legal process. That's the scary part, because when you have financial surveillance at the request of the government without a warrant, that's not supposed to be how the Fourth Amendment and the Bill of Rights works. And now we find it looks like it's broader than that, where there are key terms they're looking for. If you shopped at Cabela's, if you bought a Bible or a religious text at the Christian bookstore. I mean, for goodness sake, that's half the people I represent who make those kind of purchases. So we're going to continue to dig into this, and we'll see what we find. But it's pretty troubling what we've discovered thus far.
And all through the J6, I mean, it all began with that J6, the witch hunt into J6. I mean, people who weren't even actually, we talked about this too, people who weren't even there in D.C. that, the FBI came knocking on their door, talking with Congressman Jim Jordan. So I know, I mean, is there, in order, because as you said, I mean, it's a violation of Fourth Amendment. It seems almost redundant to say that we should have legislation to protect us against what the Constitution should already have affirmed for us. But I mean, I don't know how else to counter it and to make them stop and hold them accountable.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes just the oversight, just doing the investigation will change behavior. We saw that, for example, when 5-6 months ago, the IRS announced we will no longer be making unannounced visits to American citizens' homes. And the commissioner said, we're doing this to protect the safety of our agents. Baloney. They were doing it because we caught him knocking on Matt Taibbi's door at the very moment he was testifying in front of our committee. We made a big to-do of that. So sometimes you just change behavior of these agencies by drawing attention to it. Other times you need to put forward legislation, and that's ultimately our function as a legislative body. So I think we'll look at that as well as we go through this. But yeah, that's what was really interesting though about some of these initial documents we've received. They sound an awful lot like, the language used sounds an awful lot like that memorandum that we got about a year ago from the Richmond field office of the FBI, where they said if you were a pro-life Catholic, you're potentially an extremist, a domestic violent extremist. That is the same language it looks like some of these initial documents we're starting to get in. It sounds the same kind of language used there. So again, that's troubling as well.
And you mentioned too. I mean, again, going back to the Bank of America starting this, from what I remember, they handed information to 211 people over to the FBI, but nobody was arrested from that. So if anyone thinks that this was like some kind of fruitful effort, literally nobody was arrested out of the 211 that they handed over to the FBI. Correct?
Yeah, and I would argue more importantly, the whistleblower said there was no criminal predicate. There was no proper predicate, no probable. Why were we getting this information? Why was it? And he was very concerned about it and didn't think it was appropriate to use that kind of information, go collect that kind of information from banks. So this is an FBI agent who's worked all kinds. This particular agent was involved in some big cases in the New England area of our country. I mean, this was the guy who knew his stuff and has since retired from the FBI. So this was an agent who knew what he was doing, and he was troubled by what he saw. That's how we first got into this. And again, as I said, we're going to keep moving.
It's like a more extreme. It's like the practice of the syntax on steroids in a way. The way that they're approaching this, the perspective through which they're trying to surveil people through purchases. Talking with Congressman Jim Jordan, I want to switch gears here. The CR went through the House last night. The stopgap measure. There's a lot of consternation, I think, is the best way to describe it, because I know now you got another March deadline coming up. Talk to me a little bit about this. I know the struggle is real for conservatives like yourselves in the House. I get it. But what can be done? Because everyone's looking at the border. I mean, we got 290,000 people coming across just in, as you know, December alone. What can be done? What are we going to do here? Is this because I feel like March comes and we're going to kick the can down the road again?
Yeah, and we got some other big issues too. We got the borders you talk about, which should be, I think, front and center. We got the FISA issue. We got to get that system reformed, for goodness sake. I mean, we got a bill that we think is good that came out of our committee that needs to pass. So a number of big things all kind of come and do at the same time. Look, you're right. The border is the biggest situation, and it shouldn't require a spending bill, or it shouldn't require some supplemental to attach it to some, this Ukraine funding. It shouldn't require that. It should just get done. We're on pace to go 12 million migrants coming in the country in the Biden presidency. And I told a group the other day, that's the equivalent of the entire population of Ohio. And we're the seventh biggest state in the country. That's the magnitude of this problem. And yet this administration doesn't want to fix it. They don't want to fix it because they're intentionally causing it for whatever reason. For what reason, who knows? But that should be our focus. We should try to get that done. It just doesn't look like the Democrat Senate and certainly the Biden White House want to work with.
Yeah, that's doesn't sound like it at all. We're talking with Congressman Jim Jordan about this as well. The CR, the border, the situation with I'm going to pull this up because this is the other thing. Going back to the regulators, there's this whole thing with the digital currency and the ability. I hear every day from people who are like, okay, so when you have so-and-so on, ask them what they're doing to stop, this further regulation, the digital currency, all of this other stuff, this oversight into financial behavior, looking at all American consumer behavior, for the lack of a better way to put it. The CBDCs, the control of money, we're in a brave new world kind of territory where I get the advent of a lot of new technological capability and the financial institution with it. It's where there's a lot of gray area here. What are you all looking at in terms of protections for Americans in the House?
Well, you may need to look at some of the laws on the books right now and make changes to those. But I think in a broader sense, you may need to have consequences for people who censor Americans. So the first year of this Congress, we focused a lot on the Judiciary Committee and the Select Committee on the Weaponization of Government. We focused on this censorship issue, big government, big tech, big media, big academia, all working together to censor Americans' First Amendment free speech rights. And now we find out that there's this financial surveillance. I think this will be a lot of where we focus now. But it's all tied together. It's the weaponization of these agencies, the turning of these agencies on we the people, on the citizens who they're supposed to serve. Instead, they're weaponized against those individuals. That is a huge issue for the country. In fact, in Iowa last week in the caucuses, 8 out of 10 Republicans going to the caucuses said that they felt the government has been weaponized against the American people. And the reason they believe that is because it has. They got common sense. They thought and that motivated a number of people to come out in 20 below weather to vote for President Trump. So this is a huge issue. The country rightfully gets what's going on. We got to make sure we get the facts out there and then look at the appropriate legislative solutions, whether it's the ability to sue the government if, in fact, they infringe on your First Amendment free speech rights and try to censor you, if it's changing the Bank Secrecy Act and other things that currently are the law of the land when it comes to your financial data. All that stuff we got to get into.
There you go. Congressman Jim Jordan from the great state of Ohio. We appreciate you following this story. I know you got a hard out coming up because you're busy in D.C. today. We appreciate it and keeping everybody updated on all of this. Huge, huge issue. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.